social media companies don't have is an adversarial government that can influence the algorithm to manipulate the content you're shown in ways that will help them politically.
Okay, we've all seen the nonsense that's going on in Congress right now, so let me give my take on it. Just in case this makes it to Congress, since we like throwing things at the wall until it sticks, I am not Chinese propaganda. I'm a U.S. citizen who's grown up in the United States my entire life. I've graduated from a public United States high school, and I'm currently attending a public United States university in Illinois. I'll try to keep my language polite for you. Now let's analyze this hypothetical TikTok ban on multiple levels to show exactly how this is stupid. Level 1, data and privacy concerns. Now the main reason the government's citing as reason to ban TikTok is data and privacy concerns in the United States. The argument is essentially TikTok is a subsidiary company of the company ByteDance, which is a Chinese-owned company. Due to a Chinese law passed in 2017, they can compel Chinese companies to share data with the Chinese Communist Party. And because of this law, at any given moment, China may compel ByteDance to share data, which means that ByteDance would have to compel TikTok to share data since they own TikTok, and you know how it goes. And if that happens, that means the CCP will get unbridled access to American information. On its face, it sounds plausible, and to be fair, it's an actual legitimate concern. My main issue is the efforts on behalf of the federal government currently and the Biden administration and how exactly we're going to deal with this problem. Because there are apparatuses that we can use that we're choosing not to, and their consistency is all out of whack. Case in point, Congress, if the issue is a 2017 law in China that compels corporations to communicate with the CCP, why not pass your own law that makes data collection in the United States harder on behalf of corporations? This would, in turn, put more regulations on data collection from all companies operating within the United States, and we'll get back to why that's important. And maybe in that law you could include something about addressing data brokers, and we'll get back to why that's important. You guys could use government oversight to make sure that the TikTok data transition over to the company Oracle, which is an American company, is a smooth one and set the parameters of that transfer. And then the law I just cited could regulate Oracle or all the other platforms that are used by Oracle to make sure that the data collection is safe and secure from Chinese influence. On the point about transitioning to Oracle, it's fair enough to say, well, TikTok promised something like this and that they didn't see it through, which is true. As according to MIT Technology Review, for years ByteDance has vowed to store and process US data only in the US, but there are still reports that there are company engineers in China that are inappropriately accessing US data. Then how is the answer to this problem not enforcing the separation of user data and using third-party audits to prove that it's being done, like cited here in the article? Now let's get to the consistency of everything. Because oh lord, if this is a conversation that y'all want to have, we can have it. Because any concern levied at TikTok needs to be levied at the United States, China, and any other corporation, as both China and the United States are both responsible for hacking in order to gain intelligence from the other country. There was a 2015 breach of the Office of Personnel Management, which is essentially the government's human resources department. This breach resulting in the leaked information of 21.5 million Americans. China collecting United States data is nothing new. And the numerous other times this has happened, sometimes there's been congressional hearings, there's been investigations, but there's never been all this grandstanding about how this is an imperative that we need to do to protect the children, despite the fact that there is tangible harm being done. And I can see the argument that those previous incidences, despite causing tangible harm, didn't have anything really to do directly with children. But if that's the case, then why is Facebook, a platform that was grilled shortly after the 2016 election for allowing Russian disinfo campaigns, being allowed to lobby for the banning of TikTok, as Meta would stand to be the primary beneficiary in the event of a TikTok ban, as this is the exact same thing that happened in India when they banned TikTok. And if Facebook is more trustworthy than TikTok purely because TikTok is Chinese owned and the links to China in that regard, then by what metric are we determining trustworthiness? Seeing as TikTok is not the only company in the United States with direct ties to China. Lenovo, the popular computer brand, was founded in Beijing, and the United States military stopped using it in 2008 after discovering that data was being transmitted back to China. But we did not see a ban, despite us having precedent for banning Chinese hardware companies like Huawei and ZTE. And while those are hardware companies, while you're banning the sale of a tangible item, it's harder when it comes to free apps. The four most downloaded apps currently on the App Store for both Google and Apple are TikTok, CapCut, Shein, and Temu, all four of them being Chinese-based companies. But we didn't see a governmental ban on these apps, nor should we, because now we're just setting the precedent to continue restricting American freedom online. So instead of doing that, regulate the corporations and put up guidelines that are stronger as to what data they can and cannot collect and what they can do with said data. Because right now, despite all the fears about TikTok, there's an evidentiary gap in the actual harm that TikTok's doing. In 2021, a technical review of TikTok stated that they did not observe TikTok or its Chinese version Douyin collecting contact lists lists, recordings, and sending photos, audios, or videos or geolocation coordinates without user permission. WeChat, on the other hand, was found to surveil chats, and we'll go back to why that's important. And the reason why that evidentiary gap is so important is because chances are you're going to need that evidence in order to skirt the First Amendment when banning this app. Seeing as lower courts have held repeatedly that the mere invocation of national security is insufficient to justify the right of suppression of the First Amendment. In court, the government will need to introduce evidence that the threats it's addressing are real and not merely conjectural, and that the ban would address those threats. And the United States government currently has no evidence that the Chinese government has forced TikTok to align its algorithm with the imperatives of the country's disinformation efforts. There's also no evidence that a ban would work, considering the other dozens of companies that are still sending information to Beijing to this day unless you ban all those other companies. And there's not really evidence to support a ban stopping this national security threat, considering that data brokers are literally in the industry of purchasing data from corporations to sell for whatever means they deem necessary. As soon as you install an app and give it permissions and it collects that data, those data brokers can sell that data to anybody, world governments and China. So if you ban TikTok, what's to say that China can't just buy data from data brokers? And if there's any question as to whether or not this is a First Amendment challenge we saw when Trump tried to ban the popular Chinese messaging app WeChat in the United States, a federal court blocked it because they didn't have sufficient evidence to prove the tangible harm that was being done. This despite the fact that I just told you they were caught monitoring chats. We haven't passed stricter regulation to regulate all corporations as to what they can do with our data. We haven't banned WeChat, we haven't banned Lenovo, Shein, or others that could be showing our data to China anyway. We're gonna ban the #1 social media app right now used by roughly half the country that has inspired and mobilized an entire younger generation that is trying to comply with the United States government, reroute all US data back to US, isn't headquartered in China, and doesn't even operate in China. Yes, some ties to the CCP are undeniable, but that's why we need enforceable regulation that monitors the collection of data on all apps, instead of a preemptive ban that's based on mostly hypotheticals that may or may not even hold up when challenged by a court. And not to mention that the conduct in these hearings have been laughable for the most part. And despite my personal gripes with this app and concerns over media and information suppression, I've seen everything when it comes to the TikTok CEO, whether he's getting grilled, whether there's a random funny edit, or whether there's an actual time where he's making a good point. In fact, we've all been watching all these things on TikTok. Many people have been getting a lot of their news from TikTok. And it's no secret that I've literally built a career on TikTok. So while I personally wouldn't like to see it banned for obvious reasons, I can actually back up the myriad of logistical errors and nightmares that you have to go through in order to justify a ban in this way instead of using any other apparatus we could right now. So to the Biden administration, I'm severely disappointed in you. To the Democrats, whose big reason why they held off a red wave is due to social media apps like TikTok and the younger generation, I'm severely disappointed in you. And Republicans are doing what Republicans do, honestly. We never like them. Forgive me for my profanity, but get your shit together.
But with those other